all-around A-plus guy who's done it for the jurisdiction, Albemarle County,
Yep.
and now in business from a private standpoint with Fincham and Associates with his son and wife, a true family business.
That's true.
And just a guy that backs everything up with data. Folks, join us in the discussion. We're live on all social media. Keith, before we start the show, how are you feeling, sir?
I am feeling great. Got a house full of family. Got both my daughters in, their significant others, grandbabies, in-laws of my youngest daughter in. So we have a full house.
And Woody, your house?
Well, we're going to be visiting with my son on Thursday and his lovely wife and our 2 grandsons. So we're looking forward to that. You know, I get to cook all day and enjoy a little bit of time with the I call him the Chip and I can't think of the other nickname now that I'm on, Sawdust, because you know everything's derivative of Woody, so it's all tree stuff.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Jeremy Boyd, welcome to the program. Maggie Gunnels, hello, and thank you for joining us. Lowan, I'm going to mess your last name up, so I'm just going to call you Lowan. Thank you kindly for joining us, Lowan, this morning. Allison Wickham, hello, and welcome to the program. Judah Wickower, we can rock and roll when you are ready, sir. Good Monday morning, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk with Keith Smith. Thank you kindly for joining us the Monday before Thanksgiving. A chilly one at that, 19 degrees in eastern Albemarle County this morning. It will get a bit warmer with the U.S. men's national team on the near horizon. They start the World Cup here in Qatar. A lot we're going to cover on today's show with Woody Fincham, Keith Smith, and I believe Nikki Chambliss will join us sooner than later. Judah Wickower is our director. Judah, if we can go to the studio camera, and let's welcome 2 very smart guys that are just all around great dudes to hang out with as well. Woody Fincham and Keith Smith. Good Monday morning to you, Keith.
Monday morning. Good morning. It's chilly, and I'm excited about the World Cup, so don't just get started down that road. I mean, the fact that the World Cup is being played during the holidays, that hasn't been done in years, and I'm looking forward to that.
Woody Fincham, I know soccer is in your blood. Your grandson looks like he may be a talented soccer player as well. Every time I see something on your Facebook page, this youngster has a soccer ball at his feet. My friend, good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm super excited. I've been a soccer fan since I was about 5 years old, and you know, moving to Charlottesville 10 years ago was so cool because of how much the U.S. men's team with Bruce Arena and everybody else is tied into the school here. It's just awesome that it's going on right now.
We're fortunate to have such a sport rich in history globally with an epicenter here in Charlottesville thanks to the university men's and women's soccer teams. Keith Smith on a Monday, where would you like to begin, my friend?
Yeah, you know, that's a great place to start. But, you know, I love when Woody's sitting at the table because he brings all kinds of knowledge and genius to the table. I usually start Mondays off to you know, what's kind of happened in the last 7 days. So last 7 days we've had 64. This is on the CAR footprint, Charlottesville Area Association of Realtors. 64 new homes came on, 60 went off. And when I get a minute, I'll take a look at what the same week did last week. But Woody, I know you were crunching some numbers and a couple of things you wanted to kind of chat a little bit about, and I'm going to throw it your way. I know you were doing some thinking about the market and appraisals, so maybe we'll kick it off from your world. How you seeing things going? Are you seeing things picking up or slowing down? You know, where are you seeing things from a market perspective?
Things are still prodding along like they should. I mean, we're starting to see a weakening in buying power for sure. The rates are definitely affecting that. Days on market starting to extend a little bit. We're starting to see more concessions come on market. It's what we would expect to have happened all along. I mean, the rates, you know, the last week have done really well, coming down some, but you know, we still have a shortage of inventory, and nothing's really changed that much, really, since the last time I was on.
I spent Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at the Virginia Governor's Housing Conference. Had a little bit of panel work to do, but for the most part, I got to actually attend sessions, which is great. And it's interesting. It was at the end of the day, it was 3 days of what we've been talking about forever, right? You know, there's a lack of inventory, turning red tape into green tape. But when you start having all these policymakers start talking about, you know, we've got to get more inventory, and then how we do that, I felt that was a pretty interesting conversation. Plus, I had a great opportunity to listen to, and if somebody ever should Google this, Elliot Eisenberg, which is an economist.
Great guy.
Really fun guy. When people talk about, economists talk about the economy, it tends to be a little dry. This guy was pretty entertaining, and it resided quite a bit what he talked about in my head. But in essence, it came back to what we've been talking about. The Fed wants this to stop, wants this to slow down in a worst way.
Yep.
And some of it is working, some of it maybe isn't, right? Inventory and sales are happening. I'm very curious what the next session is going to be like, and we'll see what kind of impact that might have.
Yeah, they always trail behind because it's always retroactive or reactionary rather than, they're trying to be proactive, but there's only so much speed they can put to it.
So I was telling you off air, he used an example which I'm trying to figure out.
You should use that example. It's
Yeah.
completely legal now. It's no big deal.
Legal, got it.
Yeah.
So in his presentation, thank you, Jerry, for allowing me to do that. I wasn't sure if I could do it or not.
Please.
So it was really great. He related the interest rates and how it impacts the market to smoking to marijuana, right? And he says, if you not that he's ever done it, but as he would say, but if you smoke it in about 7 minutes, it has its effects. But if you ingest it in gummies, it takes about 90 minutes. So what's happening here is, they're taking a gummy, it's not affecting. You take another gummy, you take another gummy. All of a sudden, all this stuff hits you at once as a freight train. It affects you at that time, and that's how he architected what's happening with the interest rates. They're jacking up the interest rates. It's not really having that as a cumulative effect. And then all of a sudden, it's just going to be this. But it was interesting, and I'd love your feed on it. He does not see unemployment going up. He sees a certain sector, like we've been talking about, IT going up.
Tech is being annihilated.
But he's talking about everything else not going up, which is very unique in an economic input kind of thing.
What do you think, Woody?
I can't disagree with it. And talking about Elliot, he takes the dismal science and turns it into something that's actually palatable. It's fun to talk about because economics can be very dry, as you were saying. But I don't disagree with anything you've said, Keith. I think Elliot's probably right in the sense that we're going to get to a point where we're going to wish we hadn't gone as deep into it as we're going to go.
That's what he was saying.
I don't think there's any way to avoid that.
Yeah, so that's in essence what he was saying. He said, "Hold on to your socks, folks. All of a sudden, this is really it's gonna hit. This is why everybody's predicting that we will be in a full-fledged recession." He's also predicted that this is going to be like an 18-month recession, right? And it generally the way, and you correct me if I'm wrong, the way he was speaking, that timeline kind of started when the Fed started increasing rates. Not from the point that that we're officially in a recession. It starts when those interest rates start climbing on that end of it. He feels it's going to be about an 18-month recession for what it's worth.
How do you see next year playing out, Woody? First, Q1, Q2. Are we going to see Lisa Sturdivant, the doctor, bright economist, said it's going to be next no action in the Commonwealth through the holidays, through December. Do you see it picking up January and February? Do you think she's on point saying it's going to head into next year as well?
Well, anytime you're talking about real estate, it's local, local, local. That's what matters the most. And Charlottesville, as you guys have talked about, we've talked about many times on the show, is that we're almost insulated a little bit. We're not going to avoid some distress that goes on nationally or even statewide, but applying a Commonwealth-wide metric to a local area like Charlottesville, I think, is a little disingenuous. It doesn't work. I think we're probably going to be okay. Just we'll probably plot along the way we normally do. But even like when you go back to 08 through 11, we saw some distress in our market, but nowhere near what we saw in other markets around the country or even around the state. So hopefully we continue to follow that trend.
What do you think, Keith? And Nikki Chambliss is now
Hey,
on
Nikki.
set. Good morning, Nikki.
Good
Thank you for
morning.
joining us.
Absolutely.
Keith, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting. I agree 100%. So our youngest daughter and husband are moving from Seattle back to Richmond. So we actually spent the day yesterday wandering Richmond and looking at open houses and doing real estate stuff. Very different market, man. You know, 2 or 3 or 4 blocks one way, very different. But the price point they're in and the product that they want, and we talk about, location, feature, conditions, timing, and then who's on the other side matters on that end of it. But we went into $400,000 to $500,000 single-family detached homes that needed help. There was lines out the door, and when I got to the real estate agent, they said, "Look, we've got 5 offers on the table." I said, "Look, we're just looking. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much. We're trying to get a feel for the neighborhoods,
Right.
where we want to go." On
Which
that.
neighborhoods were they?
Oh God,
I know that
Fan.
Richmond market well.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Fan. I'd have to look up on
The Fan's always hot.
on the
Yeah.
list. Yeah, to find a single family detached in the Fan is a little difficult on that end of it. But Carytown by Cary Road. But anyway, we were looking up around in that particular area. It's he's going to be at Henrico Doctors Hospital, so he kind of wants to be on that side of
Makes sense.
side of town. But the point is that there was a line out the door, and then certain other neighborhoods that were in a different price point, to $200,000 to $300,000 price point, there was nobody at the open houses. So it's kind of indicative of what the market is. But you're spot on. So before I let Nikki jump in, I literally went back just to look at exact day, November 21st, 2021, because Smith figured out how to do this. We had 82 homes that come on the market. So we're 20 homes less, plus or minus, less than we were this last week. Pending was, hold on a second here, 84, and we're at 60. So that's 24 houses less than pending. So everything year over year, week over week is just dropping on that end of it.
Nikki Chambliss, jump in here.
Well, and last year we were not having conversations around seasonality or interest rates or any of that, not in the same way. So that impacts us greatly. Inventory is still low, and we're seeing some seasonality come back. We're seeing that rise in interest rates. Yeah, I mean, the numbers make sense.
Yeah, and so Woody, we've been talking a lot on the show about this 3-2-1-2-2-1 scenario. I know you've been looking at that a lot. We're actually having that conversation with clients to include my daughter and their son-in-law so that they can go ahead and do that. So from your perspective, is that a good program, bad? What's your positives and negatives on that?
I mean, I don't have an opinion about it being good or bad. I'm kind of indifferent or agnostic to it, to be honest. I mean, it's really whatever works for the financial situation of the people using that product. And it's different for everybody. Some people are going to need to do that. It'll work great for them. Other people, it may not be such a great deal for. Interestingly enough, though, I was going to bring this up a little later, but Ray Caudell last week had asked, when I wasn't on the show, wanted you to ask your appraiser guy about concessions and these things. And concessions they occur any time when a seller is giving up money to the borrower to make the transaction happen. So if they're giving closing costs, if they're buying down rates, if they're giving a home warranty, whatever they're paying for out of their pocket, it's coming out of the net. It's because what we're interested in from a market value perspective as an appraiser is what's the net sales price. The only thing we don't include in there, of course, are normal course of business fees and commissions for the agents. So, because that happens with every transaction. But concessions that anybody's coming out of pocket directly for to pay to the buyer, that becomes something that we can
So
look
that's
at.
is that a positive thing or a negative thing from your perspective? In other words, if we're offering 3 or 6% concessions, does that help the valuation or decreases the valuation?
It actually would be a negative adjustment for the because what we're trying to do with each sales transaction is we're trying to make it cash equivalent, because that's the definition of market value that Fannie Mae and Freddie and all of them use. And they want us to use the actual cash component. Anytime you don't adjust that out, you're including what's called non-realty components. So you end up financing things are utilizing metrics that actually include non-realty items in it. And you don't want to do that. It would inflate the value of the transaction.
So to go back to talking about Elliot and this presentation that he gave, because there was obviously he took questions from the floor, and the first question is what we get asked all the time: how come this isn't 2008? How come this isn't
Right.
2009? And he quoted, or he spoke in essence about what you're talking about. Maybe in 2008, 2009. Maybe those things would have got included in valuation, maybe not on that end of it. But the difficulty, not difficulty. What's the, help me out, guys? The challenge, to get financing now, right, is way different, and there's a scale that they have that they use on that. So is that holding true, right? Is it holding true that from your perspective, in your world, the protections that are in place to prevent 2008, 2009 are still strong and solid?
I think so. I think the market's evolved to a point where the lending guidelines it's a safer place to do financing in, because they really are looking at the collateral more than they were back in 2007, 2008. Interesting thing, because me, I'm always data driven. I actually went to one of my textbooks this morning before I came in.
The ones that you wrote, maybe?
No. This is from the 6th edition for the Appraisal Institute's Dictionary of Real Estate, and I just looked up concessions just to do a refresher. But the last part of the definition said, concessions often allow financing that would otherwise not be possible, and they usually result in artificially inflated sales prices or lease rates. Concessions may be disclosed as part of the sale or lease, but they are often not disclosed. We're fortunate in Charlottesville that we do disclose that information, so we actually know what's going on.
What do you think, Nikki Chambliss?
I didn't realize that wasn't something regularly disclosed everywhere. Truly, I'm like, oh wow, because I can't imagine trying to do what we do well without having that information, right? That's a very important part. Whether you're trying to advise a buyer on whether or not a home is well priced, or whether or not you're helping a seller price their home well for the market and for what they want, you need that information. Yeah.
So I'm trying to look through some pictures of slides that I've taken to talk about. They have this scale, and the mortgage, I think it's called the Mortgage Association, has this scale on difficulty of borrowing, how difficult it ranges from, I guess, 1 from 1,000. And, back in 08 and 09, it was 900. And I may have the numbers a little bit off, but we're hovering like around the bottom of the scale right now, meaning that it's very difficult. The conditions to borrow money is very strict, where back in 08 or prior to 08 and all that stuff, as the good doctor would say, if you fogged a mirror, you've got a $500,000 loan on that end.
Donna Halfpenny, welcome to the program. She's given Woody Fincham props. Ray Cadell will get the follow-up question for Woody Fincham here. He's got a follow-up on what you just said. Neil Williamson, I'll bring up the article that you shared with us this morning about building permits. I thought it was fantastic. I also read John Blair's follow-up on your LinkedIn page where he tagged me, JB. Welcome to the program. Maggie Gunnels, thank you for joining us on the show. Cadell for Woody. Ray Cadell's been in this business a long time. My question is more to do with appraisers treating seller funds for buy downs like any other closing costs. And what if the amount is fairly obviously added on top, even perhaps above full list price?
Well, I mean, if whatever the seller is willing to pay on behalf of the buyer becomes a concession. I mean, it's going to affect the seller's net takeaway from that transaction. And that's ultimately what there's sales price, there's net sales price, and that's net sales price is obviously going to be anything minus what they've had to take out of the transaction price to make it happen. So yeah, it would be a concession. But that leaves me a question for you two, because I'm here to learn too. If you're in a 3-2-1 buy down where the seller's doing that, would your commission be paid off of the net sales price, or would it include that?
Great question. So it's typically net sales price, right?
Right.
And it's very clear in the listing agreement that we get paid off a net sale price. But to go back to Ray Cadell's point,
Yeah.
it's not uncommon to raise the sales price. So let's say we got a $300,000 purchase and it's a $15,000 worth of
Right.
seller concession. It's now $315,000. But by the time you subtract that $15,000, you're back at $300,000
Right.
versus $300,000, and you're taking $15,000 off. So there's a little bit of a wiggle room in there, I would think. on that end of it. So if I understood Ray's question correctly, I think he's asking, what if I add this on top of it? Does that impact valuations for you?
Yeah, it will. I mean, and in both situations, you end up with different numbers, but you end up in the same situation, and that you have to do the cash equivalent price. And the cash equivalent price would be minus anything that the seller's having to give to the buyer.
Linford Berry, hello, giving Woody Fincham some props as we speak. Folks, ask questions, put them in the comment section. I'll relay it live on air. Neil with the Free Enterprise Forum will absolutely get to this analysis that you publish on the Free Enterprise Forum here on Real Talk with Keith Smith and on the I Love CVille show today. Questions coming in on Spotify and on LinkedIn, which I will get to in a matter of moments. Price reductions, this question's come on the feed. What percentage of lists, homes that are coming on market now, Woody, are you seeing from a price reduction standpoint?
I mean, we metric that with each individual project we're doing, because everything that we do has a different competitive niche that it falls in. But overall, I couldn't give you an honest answer. I'm just looking at price reductions here, 75 out of 121. So the same type of metric that Keith uses, I have a different footprint for what I use, but we were showing 111 coming on new, and then the price change is 75. That's a pretty high percentage.
Yeah, so your footprint's a little bit bigger than my footprint.
111 coming on the market, 75 price reductions out of that 111?
Yeah.
That is a massive percentage.
Yeah, it really is.
A massive percentage right there. Smith.
And I'm showing in my calculus, which is a different footprint,
Yep.
64 came on 47, which the percentage is about, quick math in my head, awfully close.
Yeah, it's very close.
Up on that. It's pretty
Startling
pretty high.
Amount of price reductions there. What
But
do you
I
attribute
would-
that to, Nikki Chambliss?
Well, I'm just taking a look, and I was trying to give some numbers for the broader picture of the last week, but I'm realizing that this also includes rentals, because I'm showing 58 in the last week of price reductions. No, this isn't a really wide footprint,
Sure.
right? This includes some in Arrington, Stewart's Draft, like anything in Carr, which can span quite a wide area.
Into Buckingham.
Right? Yes, absolutely. I'm not seeing any of those right off in here, but that wouldn't surprise me if they're in here. But this is also including rentals, so I did not realize that was in my data. I was trying to do a quick fix there.
Yeah, if you go back over to the wheel on the right, you can pull it
Yeah,
out.
no,
Got it.
thank you.
So what I'm looking for right now, which made me think about this, I'm pulling up the last 95 sold, which actually closed, and then I've got it set up on mine where I can do original price and close price, and because it makes it simple, there's green hours for up and red hours for down. There is, I'm just counting the red downs here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
A lot.
12 out of 95.
Okay.
So that's not a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. But
That's
I
over
would have to
10%.
I would have to take a deeper dive into that, and some of that could have been your seller concessions, right?
Right.
Right. And that ends up in that we'd have to literally open up each one of these 95s and then take a look at the back end of the transaction.
So let's cut to the chase. Why are the price reductions happening? Is this just agents pricing incorrectly out of the gates? Is that what's happening here?
So I think we should be careful, and I'm sure that's some of what's happening, but a lot of the agent isn't the person who sets the price, right?
Right.
The seller is the person who sets that price. So
So you're saying it's the client?
absolutely all day, every day. Now, it's based on the advice they're being given, but they don't have to take that advice. So if they're being well advised and they still choose to say no, then an agent can decide whether or not they're willing to work with this person. Oftentimes that means they're willing to work with a client knowing that they're going to have to continue that education and that there will be a future price reduction, and they've already shared this information, right?
I mean, in Woody's footprint, we're talking 68% of homes currently experiencing a price reduction.
And in-
68%.
in mine, I think it's a little closer, a little higher than that, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, a price reduction does nobody justice or service.
So I'll go someplace on this. As the market gets a little tighter, you're going to find real estate agents are going to be harder for them to say no to a listing, right?
Because you're saying that slim
True.
inventory, they're going to
Yeah.
want to take a deal to see if they can make something happen.
Yeah.
So they're going to say yes to price just to get the house under some kind of arrangement with
I'm
their
not
client.
saying all agents will do that. I can
Yeah.
I can assure you we won't do that. But
I don't do that
yeah, we're not gonna.
with our business
Well, in
listings.
any market, I think it's hard for agents to say no, especially to a listing, right? And it's not ideal, and learning how to make sure your business plan sets you up so that you don't feel like you have to take that listing is really important.
We have a client, we had someone that looked to do business with our business brokerage division, and they wanted to list at 415,000, and we get 10% of that. I mean, you're talking $41,000.
And you walked away from it.
And I said no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I passed on that.
Yeah.
But then they called us back and said, all right, we'll go with what you want.
So it's an education process, is what we've been doing on the show for. I think this is show, I can't remember. We're coming up on 400 on December 2nd. And it's our process is to educate the thing, but we're also independent business owners, right? And we have to make a decision on what's best for our business to go ahead and do this. And it's also, it's part of what I've been saying since this shift is happening. Personally, I'm super excited about this market because this is where the pros show up, right? And so you may not, it's like your kid, right? They may not like what you hear. Or your forget about grandkids. They get away with anything.
Oh, they do. They do.
But they may not like what you want to hear, but you got to be honest and truthful with them, what you think you can do. Because on the back end, again, I'm just going to go here. On the back end, if you set the wrong expectations going in, it's just going to be impossible to recover a relationship from that end of it, and you kind of go backwards. The skill of how you do that is a whole different animal.
It doesn't really concern me from my perspective. Of course, I look at the market way differently than most agents do, and most brokers do. But I think it's a normal component of a normal market for there to be negotiation going on, for you to, you're feeling out what's going on. You're going to see price changes in the normal market. I mean, we've come out of a market where everything sold for more than it was listed for, and that's what we got used to. And now we're back to, okay, I mean, if I'm going to hire an agent right now, I'm going to hire someone that I know is good at negotiating.
I sat at the table with three doctors yesterday, right? My son-in-laws and his two friends, trying to explain to them that 3% is not normal. They just assumed it was normal now.
Right.
They got used to it.
Well, they're
All they knew.
also under 35 years old.
Yeah.
So
Correct.
for the last decade of their life, which is basically their adulthood, that's all they've known.
That's
Yeah.
exactly
I mean,
right.
that's not a good baseline of.
Yeah.
I mean, how old is he? 34?
Actually 30.
Yeah. So I mean, come
Yeah.
on.
He just came into the real
Yeah,
market.
he's now an adult.
But the point is, and he's soon to be a father. The point where I was trying to get at is they literally, and to your point, negotiate and trusted advisors. They all sat down because the ones in Pittsburgh, ones in Seattle, and we talked about, of course, real estate because that's what everybody wants to talk about. But they all put this down and they said, "Well, tell me how to do this."
Well,
put their iPhone
let me
on.
ask this question. And Ray Cadell, we'll get to your follow-up here. We got a lot coming in right now. This topic has hit a maybe a sore point, if you may. The price reductions. You're saying it's customer-driven, is what you're saying. The price
So
reductions
I'm saying
are.
that the person who sets the price is always the client.
So contractually, the
Always.
seller determines the price.
Okay,
We
so
give them
here's the question:
information.
why are 68% of homes having price reductions in a recession when interest rates are floating with 7%? The markets, the indices we all follow are in bear market territory, undoubtedly bear markets.
So
layoffs are happening everywhere.
So I'll speak to this from a 35-year window, and Ray Cadell has it way longer than I've been involved in it. As a rule, as is my experience, sellers are always a little bit slower to react to the market.
I was just going to say that.
The buyers, right? And so what a lot happens here
But
is,
we've been saying that for a long time.
and it takes 6 to 12 months.
A long time.
It takes a long time for sellers to go ahead and do that. So what happens a lot of times, and you sit at the coffee table and you do it. I know Nikki's team does it. I know we do it. And you sit down and Woody says, well, my next door neighbor sold it 8 months ago for $50,000 over X. And I said, well, that's not today. And then you explain to them why
Right.
this is the market. And you have to educate them to go and do that. We have not had any price reductions because we set the price where we think it is. There may be some price reductions because of seller concessions. That's a whole different animal. But getting the price right, price matters. It always mattered. To go ahead and
Arguably the most important thing. Todd Jenkins, welcome to the program.
location would be number one, then price number two. But yes, it's up there.
Well, it can be in any location if it's priced well, you're good though. I mean, you have to price based on that.
So
Yeah.
I would like to follow up a question with Woody, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
So we're having this discussion, price, this, that,
Yeah.
the whole 9 yards. Big picture, in the world that you're in the markets that you're in, are we currently selling homes markedly below where we were selling them last year? In other words, have we lost value year over year?
I can't wait to hear this answer right here.
That's a big question.
Because he shoots it straight.
That's a big question, right?
Yeah, it's a really big question.
If you want to pick like Lake Monticello or something specific.
I would love car footprint and then go micro. Car footprint, have we lost value on homes?
Not overall, no. But with that being said, we've done a few projects in the last few weeks where we're actually seeing I wouldn't call it a loss in value, but in one of these neighborhoods, and it's in the interior Charlottesville market, but in the county, we gained about 8% through May, and then between May and this fall, we lost everything that was gained this year. So it was more of an equaling out for the year. And I think we're going to continue to see that a little bit in some of these markets. And what's really going to matter is, again, competition. Are there other alternatives on the market like what you're trying to buy or sell? And if there are viable alternatives to what's on the market and they're priced lower than what you're trying to transact at, then you're in the wrong price point. So it really depends on the actual market you're in.
Want to jump in on that, Nikki?
Oh, sure. No, that pricing is really important, and you're right. So one of the things you're looking at is not just what the neighbor down the road sold for 3 weeks ago.
Right.
You also have to see what your competition is.
Yeah, active listings are very important right now.
They are incredibly important. They're important in any market. Truly. This was pre-pandemic. These were all very important metrics to pay attention to. These were conversations that we were having with sellers then. I had the same challenges with sellers pre-COVID life because it was still a seller's market, and they still thought that their home was worth more than what the numbers and the data and the market showed. And time after time, that's proven right. Also, knowing how to educate those clients and your consumers really well so that hopefully they will price initially at a better number, right? One that works well for them, as opposed to having to learn the hard way, because once you price, and right now I think we're having that shift in market. So I don't know if it's as much of a challenge right now, but I know pre-COVID life, if we priced a little too high, I can show you that without a shadow of a doubt, every time that seller got less in the end than they would have if they had priced it well to begin with.
Yeah, you can actually stigmatize a property. if the
No
price is too high.
doubt. Scarlett, letter it.
It's rough.
Overpriced. We'll go ahead and do it. It's interesting. I haven't updated it since.
We walked through one on Sunday that, interests us, and had a price reduction. And I went straight up to the listing agent. I said, "Why did you have a price reduction?" And she said, "We came out at the wrong price."
Yeah.
I said, "How's this impacted foot traffic?" She said, "Well, I've had to answer the question about the price reduction through everyone that's came through here."
There you go.
And good
So
on her
price
for being
matters.
honest.
Price gets it right.
Literally, she said that. Every person has asked about that.
Yeah. Now, the house I walked in Richmond was priced right, and you was priced right because it had a line out the door, right? And nobody was asking, is this overpriced? And you also know it because she had 5 offers. I believe she told me she had 5 offers on the table. Went live on Sunday morning, had an open house. We were there at 1 o'clock and had 5 offers on it.
Wow.
By the time, because it was in the right location, it was priced right. Features and conditions were a little bit needed.
That's making me feel a little nostalgia for the market 6 months ago.
I know. Richmond's a very different market, though.
Oh, sure.
But
As you know,
But
obviously.
micro markets matter.
Oh, absolutely.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Micro markets matter right now. And
You like the 3Ms thing.
All right, how about the question that always gets everyone fired up?
Oh, gosh. Which one
Is this a
that?
buyer's or seller's market, Woody Fincham?
It hasn't transitioned yet to a buyer's market. We're still, inventory is going to drive that for the foreseeable future. seasonality comes into it. I'm glad you brought that up, Nikki, because we're seeing seasonality more so than we ever have. You know, it used to be when you look through it, it would be like a saw teeth on a handsaw.
Yeah.
And that's what we're coming back to that. We're seeing that especially over in the valley when you get around McGaggiesville and outside of Harrisonburg. You know, that has returned to a more normal market, even more so than Charlottesville has. But until we have more inventory on the market with more alternatives for what's out there, it'll continue to be a seller's market.
You know, we beat this inventory to death here, but that was literally 3 days of conversations at the governor's level of how do we fix inventory, how do we fix inventory, how do we fix inventory.
Perfect segue into Neil Williamson's post. Neil Williamson, this is for you. John Blair, this is for you. Neil Williamson shared this with us this morning via email. There was an article in the Richmond Times-Dispatch about building permits.
Yeah.
And the Richmond market, according to this article in the Richmond Times-Dispatch, has solved the backlog in permit delays.
Wow.
Albemarle County, unfortunately,
Has not.
has not. This is literally from Free Enterprise Forum from moments ago. I'll read the first 5 graphs. 5 graphs. First, the bad news. This is Neil Williamson, President of Free Enterprise Forum's content. First, the bad news. Albemarle County and the City of Charlottesville both have a serious permitting and approval delays that are unnecessarily negatively impacting their economic vitality. The good news, they know it and want to make improvement. Unfortunately, many of their efforts to date have not yet moved the needle. Based on our development industry sources, Albemarle simple building permits are taking 90 days. For building permits, Woody. That is crazy. Charlottesville site plan reviews regularly require multiple submissions, each taking 3 weeks, and often include 100 plus new comments per iteration. Considering the success the City of Charlottesville has had with outsourcing the city manager position, should localities be looking at outsourcing their plan review? Such outside review is regularly done by smaller localities that do not have such site reviewers on staff. The City of Richmond recently fixed their permitting delays with a multifaceted approach, and then he quotes the article from the Richmond Times-Dispatch that highlights what they have done. I mean, dude, 90 days for simple building permits, 90 days could be a completely different market. I mean,
really
cost of goods
Goods.
volatility
Yeah.
in 90 days?
Yep.
I mean, Woody, do you want to start on that one for us?
Before I start into it, I just want to say real quickly that the staff that works at, Albemarle and at Charlottesville, they are great people. They're there. A lot of those folks could be doing something out in the private sector, making a lot more money. They're there because they believe in what they do. Having worked in the assessor's office in Albemarle, the last thing I ever want to make it sound like is I'm throwing the staff under the bus, because they really
the
are
simple
good people.
fact of the matter is they're short staff.
They are.
Period.
It's a leadership
Short
issue.
staff.
Overwork
They
and underpaid.
do not have enough
But
people.
that being said, I mean, we're becoming California-ish in a way, because the developers and builders out there, it takes them years to make projects happen. Here, we're 6 months for a simple building permit. That's really going to matter now that the market's starting to transition a little bit. So, I mean, the risk rates are going way up for the builders. Small builders, I'm not seeing anything to indicate this other than just conjecture at this point of my own, but small builders are going to suffer the most here.
No doubt.
Because they can't have their carrying costs affect them more so than the larger builders
They
do.
can't just sit tight on
Yeah.
a project and wait for the market to catch up to them.
For sure.
And if they can't build, then we don't get the inventory that doesn't even catch us up.
Miss Gaffney, welcome to the program. We love when you watch the show. Lori Fincham, your beautiful wife, has a comment we'll get to here in a matter of moments. I mean, 90 days for simple building permits? Keith Smith?
So, thanks for the throw over here, because, part of what I was talking about up at the Virginia Governor's Housing Conference was turning red tape into green tape. And one of the conversations that we were having both publicly and in small groups was similar to what Out West is doing. But what an idea is to have the builders and the developers hire third parties to review the building permits, to review the inspections, to go ahead and then if we're that short-staffed and they go ahead and review it, that's a simple solution. The builders and developers will gladly pay the extra money to have a third
Why isn't that
party.
happening? It's so straightforward and common sense.
Yeah, it's
Why isn't that happening, Woody?
He used a bad word in the public sector, common sense.
Common sense?
yeah.
So you're saying it's just convoluted by red tape
Well,
and political bureaucracy?
yeah. So I think
Yeah.
and not to throw anybody under the bus, because we all work very closely with everybody at local governments, particularly at the elected level on the end of it. But you used the right word. It's a leadership thing,
Yeah.
right?
So
It's-
who determines that? Council or the supervisors?
Oh, it
Ultimately, the
depends.
voters do, but
Yeah.
they're not. Local politics, unfortunately, escape most people who vote. You know, they'll turn out for a national election, but when the ones that really matter are our local
All
ones.
politics is
Yeah,
local.
yeah.
So generally, the way, and Neil will correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure that he will, at the end of the day, the Board of Supervisors only can hire and fire one person, and that's the county administrator, right? So they need to communicate with the county administrator, and everything downstream from that is on the county administrator to go ahead and hire and move back and forth. But it could be an initiative from the board level and say, okay, guys, look, if we all agree, because that's all this was talked about for 3 days, if we all agree we need more inventory, and part of the problem is the red tape, here's a solution. And as a recovering developer and builder, if I had to pay an extra $2,000 for a deal,
You would do it in a
I'd
heartbeat.
do it in a heartbeat. Because for me to carry it for 90 days would cost
Way
more.
more. Way
Yeah,
more.
We're more than happy to do it. And there's part of it also, Jerry, and I think we're turning the corner on this. There's this lack of trust out there. Let's just call it what it is. Sometimes there's a lack of trust between people that did what I did, that were maybe not so honest and not so trustworthy, that some staff folks got burnt. And so they're going to retract a little bit back to that. It's also the other way around. The builders and developers, constantly, the goalposts are constantly moved on them, right, through the process. So there's this lack of trust, and that's something we're actually working on at the last 3 years with the Regional Housing Partnership to kind of bring these bodies together. But, it's frustrating. It's a simple solution, and it should be implemented, and it's not.
Let's get to the fabulous.
Excuse me, it's interrupted. Excuse me, interrupt you. It is implemented in the septic world, in the on-site septic world. You can hire a third-party engineer to do all the septic work for you, right? About $2,500, $3,000, and then the health department stamps it. So
Right.
it's literally the same process.
County Administrator Jeff Richardson, a neighbor
Yeah.
of mine. Lori Fincham, your fabulous wife. When new sellers see their neighbors' homes selling for more, they don't often know what kinds of concessions those neighbors gave. Education is key.
Yeah. So
Strong
back-
comment right there.
It really is. And that actually defines what an appraiser is really supposed to be doing. When we go in and look at these things, we're calling agents and we're looking at the MLS. We're doing the research and the diligence to say, okay, I see it listed for $350, it sold at $350, but what did it really sell for? And that's important information to have.
That's a ton of work on your end. That's a ton of work to get there.
It is, and I think that's, in my profession, we're worried about AI and other things like that taking over what we do. I think that's one of the reasons why it won't happen, because you're always going to need a human being filtering that specific information that we need to have.
Because one house from one, if that was the case, we would all not be getting phone calls when tax time happens, that
Right.
my house is not appraised right, for tax assessed right. It's either too much or well, nobody ever says it's too little, but too much on that end of it.
Louis Delgado giving you some props. Ray Cadell says this, let me put a sharper point on this. If a contract comes in above list price with the buy down paid by the seller, is your guess position, meaning you, that either the property was priced too low to begin with or that the contract artificially is attempting to raise the value?
Well, you're adding, what's the word I'm looking for? Obviously, my Starbucks isn't working this morning. You're adding more to the sales price to facilitate the transaction. So it is an artificial lift, and that artificial lift needs to be pulled back out. Again, it comes down to net sales price. So if you raise it or if you don't raise it, if you're paying concessions of any kind, that's paying something on behalf of for the buyer for the transaction to happen. So that means that whatever the net is, removing what's being paid, whether it's added to or not added to. I don't think it's a matter of being priced appropriately or inappropriately. That specific thing is happening to make that specific transaction happen.
So today, let me ask the question a different way. So today, there's a $300,000 home that's on the market. We bump it to $325 because we're paying all this stuff, right? and you see it, because you see it started at 300 and then now it's 325. My suspicion is you're going to pick up the phone and ask why. Do you do that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So
that's
talk a little
that's
bit about that.
Well, here's the thing too. As the appraiser, I'm not adjusting the transaction amount for that particular sale. I'm adjusting the comps.
Got it.
If the comps are doing that, then of course we'll pull it out. And that's the same thing that's happening with the subject. And that's why we want to use very recent comparable sales versus using dated comparable sales when we can. Because, chances are if the market's working the way a market usually does, everybody's kind of doing the same thing at the same time. So it's not going to affect the transaction price for the subject, but it will affect the net sales price for the comparables.
Which then ultimately impacts the subject, right? Because now the value that you may come up with is going to be less than what the contract
Right.
amount is, and then that becomes a whole different conversation on our side of the
It could,
table.
yes. But I think I mentioned this the last time I was on. I've never not supported a sales contract because of concessions. It's never been an issue for us. But
That says a lot there.
the other thing that we're not in is a declining market right now. So, I mean, if we were having, to make market condition adjustments over 6 or 12 month old comps, and then also pulling concessions out, because concessions increase as the market decreases or the buying power goes away for the consumer, you end up kind of double dipping and hitting it harder that way, if you understand what I'm saying. But
I'll explain that a different way.
so if we're transitioning and we're starting to go down in value for a market, your older comps, the concessions paid on that are going to be less than they will be for current comps. So you're going to be adjusting downwards, not as much for the older comps on concessions, but you might be adjusting heavier because we're starting to see a decrease. Of course, we're not seeing a decrease in most markets right now, so I'm bringing up something that's going to make the chess game a whole lot more complicated.
Well, complicated is what we do.
Sure,
Right?
sure.
So, Nikki, you want to jump in on it? Because I want to talk to Nikki about Woody about Lake Monticello here in a minute.
I've been called worse.
Sorry about that.
Multiple people are putting on the feed here. Nikki,
I don't
you
know how
jump
to
in.
take that. Yeah.
Values they're expecting to drop early next year. Multiple folks are saying this.
So are we talking week over week, month over month, year over year?
Or
Right?
year over year.
Year over year?
Yeah. Because early 2022 was chaos bananas, people overpaying list price. So we're now going to have a
Early
year over
20
year.
Are we talking like early 2022?
Early 2022,
Okay,
Q1
we're also
into
balancing
Q2.
some of that out already, and we did starting a few months ago. So I don't know year over year. We might see a slight decline. I do know that regardless, everything spiked so high over the last 2 years that if we look at our bigger picture trajectory, we're still way ahead of where we should, air quotes, should be with home values, right? So long-term picture, we're not
They're
looking
talking
at-
year over year.
Yeah, maybe. It depends. It depends on your neighborhood. It depends on your pricing. Well, that area, that location, that's where Keith's saying that location really matters the most, comes into play.
Well, let's
right?
get into reality on that too, and that being, we are regurgitating information from a national media system that works in 24-hour cycles. They only get people to click on the links and to watch stuff when it's hyperbolic. They always describe what's going on.
Sensationalized.
Yes, thank
There
you.
you go.
And it just doesn't work. I mean, real estate again is local, and whatever's going on the national level is not necessarily what's going on here in Charlottesville. I can tell you, when I was working in the assessor's office, the worst day every year for us in the office was when the progress would put out that the county is either going up this much or going down this much. Because if you lived in Glenmore, your percentage change was way different than if you lived out in Old Trail, or if you live in Farmington, or if you live in Forest Lakes. So, I mean, we would get phone calls from folks that didn't understand how any of that worked, and they're going, well, you took my value down 3%, but it went down 6% last year, according to the paper. It's all relative to the market that you exist in. So if I could tell the consumers anything, it's to stop digesting what the national media is giving you, because that stuff is poison.
There you go. Well said. Keith?
So I'm just running some quick Lake Monticello numbers from 2019 to now, just to kind of talk about that a little bit. I take the time, and we all do here, but I read all the economists' data, and I'm going to go back to the one that I spent the day, we were up in D.C. Look, the reality of it is nobody's predicting reversal in appreciation. We're just not doing double-digit appreciation year over year. It may be single digits. It may be something more attuned to the 3%, 4%, 5%. That's kind of the historical norm.
Right.
That being said, these same group of people said we were never going to get over 4% 30-year mortgage rate. So then there's that. So just saying.
And that being said, that same group of people makes their business on real estate and inspiring consumer confidence. Let's cut to the chase.
So it's really interesting.
I mean, we're a sophisticated consumer here.
I'm going to probably get myself in trouble more today, and Nikki's going to kick me under the table.
I can't reach. You're safe.
But it's interesting. So Dr. Lisa Steravent is very direct. Lawrence Yun with NAR is not so much, right? He's a little bit more rosier about what's going to happen.
His position requires that, though.
Yeah,
he's a politician.
So he's
a politician.
That's the difference. And
He's a brilliant economist.
oh, without a doubt. And he's basically saying the same thing I'm saying, is it's going to be of the lower number. Dr. Lisa Steravent was a little bit more Eisenberg.
She was bearish.
Yeah, Eisenberg was, well, no, she's just saying between now and the end of the year is going to be like a very minimal sales thing. Her 2023 projections are not bearish, but they're in very low single-digit appreciations on that end of it.
I love it when you two start throwing back bullish and bearish.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, she basically said there's going to be no movement for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
I would say that's the definition of bearish.
But to Woody's point, that's more, and Nikki's point, that's more normal, right? More normal.
Yeah.
Usually, the week before Thanksgiving till after the New Year. I mean, you tell me, is it normal that you normally slow down in your business at that end of it?
Yeah, we right around Thanksgiving and right around Christmas, I'm always panicking because we've had a delta change from month to month that isn't in the positive usually, but we're still making money, and that's the thing. We're more normal. We're going to be more normal than we were normal last time this year.
So I know you do this because you're a sharp guy, right?
Uh-huh.
You write your business plan for next year and your budgets for next year.
Right.
Are you projecting more business or less business?
Well, I'm looking for more business, or I'm projecting more business in the sense that when the economy starts to waver a little bit, divorces go up, and
Yeah.
estate planning becomes a bigger thing. Conservation easements have come back really strongly this year because those with money and a lot of land, they are looking at ways to get their tax credits. So we do a lot of non-lending work, and that non-lending work fills in a lot of gaps. I mean, I'm going to be testifying in court at least 2 times next month. So I mean, that's with divorces. 90% of the time it settles. We never go to court.
It's got nothing to do with me, right?
Oh, no.
Okay, good.
And also, he has an advantage that you guys do not. There's a lot less appraisers than there are realtors in the market.
This is true.
And he's an extremely established branded appraiser that can capture market share because of his experience and his pedigree. The fact now that he's also going to talk to you like this. You guys have a hell of a lot of people in the market that do what you do.
But
a hell of a lot.
But only about 20% of them produce a huge volume of business.
I think Quentin called it on Friday a little over 1,300 in this market.
But understand that of that 1,300, over the last 3 years, a very large percentage of those 1,300 have had no transactions to at most 3, right? That's a very large group of those people.
So I used to, in 2008, I invested into a sunglass business. Was the owner. It was called Hollywood Shades on Ivy Road, next to the Papa John's and Foods of All Nations in the University Shopping Center. Put $30,000 into this business, me and another guy, and we had a general manager run it on our behalf. 2008 was one of the very difficult time to sell $500 sunglasses.
Sure.
And when we launched and created the business model, you know what we said? We said the folks on the downtown mall that were selling the $10 sunglasses in the stands outside on the downtown mall, like the tables that are not in the storefronts,
Oh, we know.
on the downtown mall. We're like, no, they're not competing with us. They're selling $10 sunglasses, $15 sunglasses. That's not competition for Versace, Louis Vuitton, Ray-Ban, Coach, and the sunglasses that we were selling. We found out very quickly that $15 sunglasses compete with Versace
Absolutely.
and Louis Vuitton and Ray-Ban. And the agent that might be doing 1 or 2, 3 deals a week is still eroding market share from you.
Sure.
So we're talking
and
about
you. That's
1
fact.
to 3. No. So 1 to 3 over 3 years. they're not the competition. You're comparing someone in sunglass business full-time with someone else in sunglass full-time at different price points. I'm talking about somebody who sells a pair of sunglasses on Facebook Marketplace versus someone who has a brick and
That's a fair
mortar
point.
store. That's not the same comparison. You know what I mean?
Well, the whole market, our industry's completely changed. Brick and
Oh,
mortar's
yeah.
not there.
Well,
But-
no, but I was talking about for apples to apples comparison in this concept.
So there's-
Agents that do 1 or 2 deals a year are still taking deals away from agents that are doing 30 deals a year.
And this is why,
Still not
I've
an apples
added
to apples
this.
comparison, and I said over 3 years.
I've added this 6th feature, right? It was location, price, features, conditions, timing, which is everything. And who's on the other side matters. It's more now
Oh,
than
for
ever
sure.
because you need, they need 2 skilled folks on either side. But I want to go back to Lake Monticello in numbers, right?
Got a lot of comments coming in too.
Got it. So let me just get this out there, and it might help some other comments. So Lake Monticello, I tend to look at this a lot simple because it's 45, 43, 4,400 homes. One thing, they're all pretty much the same, single-family detached. 2022, no new construction. I dropped that out. 232 sold, 5 days on market. 318 was the median sales price. And Woody, if I'm wrong on these numbers, correct me. 2021 was 293, so there was a drop in number of units, 6 days on market, but the sales price was 270, so we jumped from 270 to 318 year over year. 2020, we were at 275, so that was less units sold in 21, 232, so was less than 270, so we're appreciating. In 19, there was 252 units sold, we're at 224 medium, so medium sales price. So 19, 20 was a pretty narrow gap, about 10 grand. Then it jumped from 20 to 21, about 50 grand. And then from 21 to 22, another 50 grand, another 40 grand. So I'm trying to do some quick math in my head. So we're not going backwards.
Right.
But what's going to happen is I think you're going to see a closer year over year increase, closer to 19 and 20 than you will ever see for 20 to 21.
Maybe,
Does that
maybe
make
not.
sense?
So what I'm concerned about right now is JP Morgan and the other institutional investors. I mean, JP Morgan just announced they want 1 million single-family units to be held. They want to build whole single-family communities where they own every unit in the community, and they're going to use it for portfolio rental.
And I literally just got chills up my back.
Yeah, it scares me too because that's going to make home ownership less of a right and more of a
Inventory is
privilege.
a problem. Builders aren't building. Developers aren't developing. And the street is gobbling up SFDs. That's going to make what we all do here.
Capitalism always wins. The invisible
Real
hand
hard.
always wins. Jerry Russell says, Nikki, that she agrees with me. That's Avenue Realties. Jerry Russell on that comment. This one from Neil Williamson. Harry Truman famously asked to be sent a one-arm economist, having tired of exponents of the dismal science proclaiming on one hand this and on the other hand that. Neil Williamson. This comment is coming in from our friend Grayson, who routinely watches the show. And Grayson has said this: if you're saying that inventory is going to go down and rates are going to stay relatively where they are, wouldn't we expect potentially values to go up next year because there's not enough potential inventory? Please address that topic.
Sure, and I think Keith and I and Nikki have all said this multiple times in that values going to continue to go up if things stay status quo, but they won't go up in double digits. They're going to go up, in the lower single digits.
So I'll add to that because I'll explain exactly what I explained to my daughter and my son-in-law when we're looking in Richmond. Where matters.
So much.
Certain neighborhoods will decrease in value. The neighborhoods that everybody wants to be in will increase in value, to Grayson's point, because the inventory just isn't going to grow. And evidence of that is a line out the door on Sunday. And then the house that was not in such a desirable neighborhood, there was nobody there.
Yeah.
Right. So and at the end of the day, it was the same square footage, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, single family detached. From a building perspective, it was about the same conditions, same features, same everything. It was all about the location.
Meredith Young, welcome to the program. Keller Williams Alliance is Meredith Young. New to the game and real estate. Enjoy seeing you around school with your with your youngsters. Guys, let's talk about this right here. The small builder. How does the small builder, this is a good topic and good question and comment that's come in. How does the small builder survive the next 12 months with the cost of goods increasing, with his debt service increasing, and with limited buyers out there?
I would not want to be a small builder right now. I mean,
Thank you, Spencer.
my family has a contracting background too. My brother's a Class A contractor. My father built as well. And small builders will actually start taking on work at a diminished profit, sometimes no profit at all, just to keep their people busy. And that's a hard spot to be in, because you're as the owner of the company taking the brunt of the damage there, just to make sure your people can work. Because if you don't keep them working, what happens, Keith? They go work for somebody else.
I've been down this road more than once. Yep. Yeah. Then what happens is they go work for Woody, and you'll never get them back.
Yeah.
So
The small builder we're repping, we helped him pivot into home remodeling services. And the home remodeling services, interestingly, have a 3x margin of what new construction, sometimes 4x margin of what new construction is done. And as the homeowner stays in the house longer and longer, they see the warts on their house get worse and worse. So they're more apt to use a HELOC to fix those warts.
And then from a builder's perspective, it's even better, because some people want to work in a renovation environment less than a new construction.
Because it's inside.
You're outside.
In the winter.
Yeah, absolutely. You're outside the elements. You're generally getting paid a lot more because the project is a lot more expensive on that end of it. But you're 100% right. You know, what happened in 2008, 9, and 10, it was just an evisceration of trades.
Right.
They just vanished.
Well, the lenders would not lend money. I mean,
No.
they got all those funds and then just decided, well, we're going to keep them and we're not going to use them.
So you gave me chills. Now I'm getting chills back up my spine. Been down this road before on the end of it. But to talk more about the small builder end of it, the best advice I could give a small builder at this point, to Woody's point, I know that's the default, right? The default is, okay, I'll take less money, I'll take greater risk, right? Just to keep people busy. So if this changes, and I've been through this drill before, and a lot of this stuff you can't control as a builder. And I know it's hard to lay people off. It's hard to go through down that road. My encouragement is look at this thing from a very altruistic perspective on your budget, on your balances, on your contracts, right? Don't get emotionally involved in it on that end of it.
Altruistic means charity.
Yeah, I know that. I thank you for smiling. I realized
Yeah.
I said the wrong word after I said it. But remember, there's Keithism, so there you go. But thank you very much for correcting me on that end of it. But yeah, what I was trying to say was, you're going to have to look at this thing without emotion.
I'm seeing a lot of small builders, and I'll throw it to you, a lot of the small builders also jumping into purchasing, at least the ones we're working with, purchasing property that needs rehabilitation, which they're doing themselves, and then renting it themselves.
Yeah, we're seeing that too. I'm doing a lot of hard money loans and, Farm Credit, or the other one is First Bank. They're the two largest ag lenders in the Commonwealth. Well, they also lend on residential, higher rate usually, but it's better than using a revolving credit line of some kind. What I was going to mention to go with Keith also is that I would think, and of course don't take builder advice from me because I'm an appraiser. I can just tell you what I've watched over the years, the 25 years I've been doing this. The rates are getting back to a level where rehab loans are going to become a thing again. 203Ks, home styles with Fannie Mae. Look into those and understand how they work. I mean, if you've got liquidity in your business and can do a draw system where you're on a draw schedule with a bank, the 203K works out really well for you. And we're going to start seeing, as properties, when you get into this market where it's moving towards a buyer's market, condition matters way more than it did even 6 months ago. People would buy a halfway a property that has, like you use, Keith, has a lot of warts on it, but they wouldn't pay any less for it because there's no inventory. Now that's changing. So now you can buy something, maybe get a deal on it, and then spend some money on it
Well,
after.
that's the key. You've got to get a deal on it because
Yeah.
what you don't want to do is overbuild for the market.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Sure.
And that's when you need a trusted advisor to say, okay, well, this is where the market is today. That's almost as bad as going into a market overpriced
Yeah.
on that end of it. So, and that, again, this is a conversation I'm having with my daughter and son-in-law, the exact same thing. I've been around construction all my life,
Yeah.
Dad. I can do this, right? And I said, look, honey, if you're paying this for this in this neighborhood and you put X in it, you've just overpriced it. It's going to take you years to catch up with that.
Well, when you're using a 203K or a home style, there is an appraisal involved, and the appraiser does an as-is value and to be completed value, sorry. So they do a real value of what it is right now and then a hypothetical value of what it would be right now if it was in the condition that it's going to be in when it's rehabbed. And that essentially creates what's called a feasibility analysis. So, you understand what is the contributory market value of all these improvements you're going to do. So if you're going to try and put a $90,000 kitchen in a $200,000 townhouse, your appraisal, it shouldn't make it unless you're buying at $100,000 below market when you buy it.
What do you think, Nikki?
I think I'm not jumping in right now. Sorry. My brain was in 5 different places, and I just couldn't.
Well, I used the wrong word, so
I know.
you can jump in anywhere, any place that you want.
Late,
How do we
I've had
fix
enough
this? How do we
coffee.
fix it? How do we make things better? How do we optimize this? The building permits is one, certainly.
Yeah, so we're back on how do we increase inventory, right? Is
Yeah.
that what we're talking about? Look, a lot of it is just the market, right? You can't control the market, but so much. I think the jurisdictions can do some help there. If they can go ahead and simply implement a situation where, your client that does the
Remodeling.
thank you, remodeling and
There's
renovation.
a waiting list until the end of next year.
And how long does it take to get their
Yeah.
permits? Pretty much the same amount of time, right?
Yeah.
90 days, right? So on that particular project or new construction, I think if you can do the model similar to the septic side of it, where you can do that. Now, I remember in 2000 when we had the same labor problem. My house is a modular, custom modular, 6-box custom modular. We couldn't find framers. So I actually got them, I had them built in the factory and had it delivered, and we did 30, 40 houses like that on the end of it. And I had trim carpenters and plumbers and all that stuff I had, but I didn't have framers because it just didn't exist at that particular point in time. So we adapted to that, and we had boxes come down on it. Then when the labor market kind of got better, we stopped doing it because it was more expensive for us, believe it or not, more expensive for us to do that. So people just need to start thinking a little bit outside the box. But man, I think everything that I'm reading, inventory is going to get tighter and tighter and tighter, and the buyer pool is going to stay deep. The qualified buyer who is prepared to spend the money, to put the money, to whatever they need to do to buy with these life changes.
Yeah.
Husband and daughter and son-in-law having a baby, they need a house.
Sure.
These life changes are going to happen. It's going to be hard, but you need to skill folks like Nikki and her team to navigate it.
Well, and this is part of some of the conversations we've had before of people have been and are going to probably continue to stay in the home they're in for a little longer because of this inventory shortage, right? And they're just going to need to hire people and be on the year-plus waiting list to make the space that they have work. In the same way that we've talked about buyers needing to maybe adjust, hey, maybe your next home needs to be a stepping block and not your forever home because what you really, really, really want doesn't exist, and also you need a place to live.
Very well
Right?
said. Very well said.
So what's maybe not encouraging, the same questions that Jerry just asked us was being asked at the Virginia Governor's Housing Conference. How do we fix this? The people that are making the policy are asking everybody, how do we fix this inventory? That's not a good place to start from.
I mean, maybe what you start with, hey, elections matter.
Yeah.
And you got 3 spots on the Board of Supervisors and 3 spots on City Council coming up in less than a year.
And from a realtor standpoint, RPAC, Gosh, I wish I knew what it stood for right now, but it is what the state
Yeah, so
NAR
it's
uses.
it's their lobbying group that
Yes.
I mean,
they help
one of the guys watching, Neil Williamson, instrumental in that pack.
without a
Yeah,
doubt,
and
without a doubt.
it's wonderful, and I will say, a lot of times, and I am one of those people, I've had hang-ups about that, because the reality is they give money to people who do things that are not helpful and are sometimes harmful to my family and
But
people
what-
I love, but also, the people that I love and my family don't have income if I don't work in my industry, and so having that as what I've decided to still give, and I'm one of those donors that gives, I don't know, what is something, not just when I renew, right? I give a
Realtor
monthly
Political
amount.
Action Committee.
Thank you.
We
One of these
just,
days I'll remember that. But it's really important.
I'm in this year's class of the Pat Jensen's Leadership Academy, or whatever they're calling it.
Yep.
And we just spent a
Jensen
whole
Leadership
day.
Academy.
Yeah, it's an awesome program. It's for up and coming leaders in the realtor environment to learn how to work within the association and all of that. But we just spent a whole day with two of the lobbyists that work for VAR, the Virginia Association of Realtors, and what they do is very intriguing. And they talked exactly about what you were just saying.
Yes.
That they're really focused on what's going to help consumers and what's going to help the practitioners out there that are licensed, and they want to do everything they can. And they're not political as far as left versus right. They are looking at the individual candidates and what they can do and what they say they're going to do.
And truly, I had a point this year, a few months ago, where I was like, do I pull my RPAC funding or not? Because there are certain things that are in action that harm my people.
Sure.
Like what?
Right, I don't know that actually, you know what? Yeah. So my family is full on queer, LGBTQ variations on that spectrum. And there are a lot of people out there who think that that's not only not okay,
In
but
the real
want
estate
to
PAC?
know, politically speaking. So our PAC, the money goes to politicians, period, right? Some of those politicians will move things forward that harm my people. Also, I decided where I landed was, you know what, I'm going to give to our PAC, and I'm also going to continue to make sure that I vote based on a very wide base of things, including LGBTQ issues being a very, very big one. Also, real estate related issues are really important and near and dear at heart. So doing the things that are needed to help advocate for those things in every way I can, as you guys talk about so very often, starting locally, because that really, really matters. Big picture matters too, but also I think we should all try to change ourselves first and then our backyard as well, and that will have a ripple effect, right?
So let's put RPAC in a little bit of and we'll just kind of wrap up RPAC on this thing. We would have not been working through the pandemic if it wasn't for RPAC.
Right.
Yep.
RPAC convinced the governor that we were a vital industry.
Absolutely.
They convinced the governor by indication of the 2008-9 how that we're second of GDP of the state.
And didn't RPAC help drive the advancements you guys have had in health insurance?
Huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is monumental for the
Yeah.
agents.
And those
It was a long
those,
time needed.
those
Denise
are-
Ramey helped lead that charge.
Without a
Yes,
doubt.
she
Yep.
did. She has done
Running
so
the
much.
program.
So with just to put that in perspective, we were not allowed as an industry and as an association to collectively put together a health program, right? So I don't know if the Appraisers Institute has a health program. I don't know what
They do.
Yeah, so we were not allowed, for whatever reason, we were not allowed to do that up until, and it took years and years to get through the state legislature. I may have some of the details wrong, and Neil will fill it in. Bottom line is, RPAC was instrumental, along with some key individuals, Denise Remy being one of them, to go ahead and force that through. So now we have the ability to have health insurance because we make too much. The typical real estate agent makes too much money to go on the Affordable Care Act, right?
Right.
So anyway,
And even if they don't, because I will say some of my earlier years in, that's how I was having health insurance, and the cost of that health insurance for one youngish, healthy person was incredible.
so you mentioned the Virginia Andrew, who's on that. I'm actually got him coming on the show. So he's the lobbyist for the Virginia Realtors for the National Virginia Real Estate come on, help me out, Builders Association, right on that. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we were talking about here, about how we can turn green tape. It's going to be red tape into green tape.
Nice.
Wait, I need another sip of coffee. Red tape into green tape on that end of it. So it'll be an interesting show. I've got him and Jesse Rutherford actually going to come on and talk about that stuff.
Now, one of my good friends, Bill Garber, is our chief lobbyist at the Appraisal Institute. I'm just so intrigued by what they do and the conversations that they are having. It's amazing. Those folks, they have a very hard job.
Yes.
What do you guys think at 11:31, 2023 is going to look like? You got folks at Avenue, Nest, Long and Foster, a lot of Keller Williams Alliance, Real Estate 3, all watching the program as we speak right now.
Well, so let me start because everyone else is pausing and you can't have dead air on a radio show. I'm just saying. So I think that what it's going to look like, I think we're going to see our seasonality coming back. I think that the need for realtors who even those who already have great skill, and I've mentioned this before, I think we need to really make sure that our skill is on point. I think we need to make sure that we know what's happening at a rate that we've never needed to before as far as our industry and the upcoming changes, and have conversations around the economics of it. And I know that happens in a lot of places and a lot of offices, and I hope that's happening at a broader level, and it needs to continue and even get better, right? I think that educating consumers, period, of facts, of things that are helpful for them in their best interest, right? They may not be my client yet, but making sure that what they're being taught is in their best interest. Not just doing it for the sake of that dollar, which ethically speaking, a realtor cannot. And we all know that means that there's room for improvement in any given situation. So I just think we need to continue to grow in that. And I think that happens and has been for many years in the area that we work in this car footprint. I think we have a really amazing group of realtors that are practicing and doing what they do at a rate that doesn't exist anywhere else. And we need to keep that up and keep improving.
Nice. Well said. And the name that you were looking for was Andrew Clark.
Thank you.
A lobbyist for the Home Builders of
Thank
Virginia.
you. Thank you.
I watch this guy. He's working 5 different gags.
Thanks for not
looking
derailing
up,
my thought.
keeping it straight.
I'm just trying to get the right word out of my mouth.
Andrew Clark. I've been
Also,
doing
why
this-
don't you have a coffee
I've been doing this
pot
for
in here?
21 years.
We need
literally.
a coffee maker, Jerry. in
So-
your
What's that?
office. We need a coffee maker for 2023 in your office.
Just bring it with me. Yeah.
I'll add in, and I'll talk about it from an appraiser's point of view. I think it's more important now than ever that the appraisers that are out there doing all this work for the mortgage transactions actually know what they're doing when it comes to market analysis. I'm still seeing a lot of reports that I review where it's obvious the market's either going up or going whatever it's doing, and then the appraisers are marking it as stable, or they're not making any adjustments for difference in a 12-month difference between when something sells and now. That's honestly, it's dangerous for the public trust because it's ultimately the public who ends up bailing out these banks when they go under, when they have bad paper. I'm hoping that we see more folks getting involved with if they don't know how to do it, that they learn how to do it, because it's not that hard to do it. But I mean, any good appraiser out there, like any good agent out there, should be able to look at their market data and almost understand to the day what the market's doing. And if you don't understand that, then it's what I see in our business often from the appraiser side is that you might have been innovative 20 years ago, but you're no longer innovating. You've stopped evolving, and when you can't evolve as the market evolves, you're not really doing anything other than filling out check boxes and signing a report. You need more than that in the appraisers that are out there working. And I think, to Nikki's point, we're going to see a lot of agents and appraisers decide if this is really something they want to do next year.
I think when it comes time to renew everybody's dues,
100%.
You're going to see a whole
Yeah.
different world.
Yeah.
We've had a couple realtors approach us about doing sales for our business.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
This business,
Yeah.
literally.
But we're seeing more real estate agents that do residentially most of the time are now trying to transition into commercial, because commercial's still going pretty strong.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah,
usually
I see commercial backing off.
it
next
is,
year.
because it
Yeah.
trails residential by about a year or
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
So-
Next year, Commercial is going to be
But it's
very-
low-hanging fruit at the moment, and they
yeah.
see it as something they can get into, which is really dangerous because it's a completely different beast.
It's the
Oh, yeah,
Wild
no
West
doubt.
is what that is.
Well, it's not necessarily. I do enough of it. It's not necessarily.
You want to know what the Wild West is? Business brokerage.
Yeah.
That right there is
Yeah.
the Wild West.
Very, very good
because
point. Yeah.
because you're not selling like a tangible piece of property. You're selling a business, and most
There's no associations, there are no codes,
Yeah.
and you're
No
literally
codes.
selling a P&L.
Actually, there is an association.
For business brokerage?
Yeah, American,
Locally?
it's national, American Society of Appraisers.
Well,
They have a
very
going
nice.
concern division.
For a business brokerage,
Yeah.
interesting.
And yeah.
I-
learn
it's-
something every day.
It's absolute chaos out there with that, especially right now.
And to Nikki's point, commercials like that because the caveat about that is some are real estate agents, like licensed real estate agents, and some are realtors. And realtors, we have ethics, a different thing. But
Right.
look, to wrap up the show,
Yeah.
so my prediction for what it's worth, Woody, we're all agreeing we're in a normal lull, right? We're seeing the normal low in the market. When do you normally see the next normal low? Is that like midsummer, right? Like a July, August kind of thing?
I think when we get to April and May, if we're starting to show a strong lull then, that's
too
when I
early.
start to get
That's too
concerned.
early.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen.
So
though.
you kind of went, Woody, exactly where I was trying to go. I think what you're going to, I'm going to stick to this and see how it goes, and we'll find out in May or June when we do the show and run the numbers. But I think certain locations are going to suffer.
Sure.
Other locations are going to just keep on rocking and rolling. And,
Well, functional utility becomes the issue there. You know, what the
explain that for a second.
So functional utility in real estate is, you know, what utility does the property serve, right?
Right.
So if you want to be downtown, well, downtown usually stays hot.
Sure.
It's going to be a more competitive market. But if you're going to be out in a fringe market, a tertiary market, maybe you don't want to drive an hour to come to work every day. So that can really affect things.
Where is going to matter. It's going to be micro locations. Some areas are going to actually go backwards in value, and some areas are going to accelerate at high rates of return because there's simply not enough homes to buy, and the buyer pool is that bigger. So I just think, you know, you're going to see some areas are going to be seller's market, and some areas are going to be buyer's market. And I think that's where we're going to end up.
Keith Smith, Nikki Chambliss, Woody Fincham. This show's been dynamite. Easy to host, 11:40. So we went an hour and nearly 30 minutes
Thank you.
without a
Yeah.
commercial break here. I Love Seville Network today, presented by Keller Williams Alliance, Yes Realty Partners, and Fincham and Associates. Real Talk with Keith Smith. All the shows archived on. Viewers and listeners, if we did not get to your comments, we will save them for the following week. Real Talk with Keith Smith is off till next Monday.
There you go.
A week from today, 1 week from today. Judah Wickhauer is the value director of the program, the network. The I Love Seville show is up in approximately 50 minutes, guys. Have a good morning.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Awesome, yeah.
Nicely done. You can tell us when the mics are off.
Are y'all all doing turkey?
Very well done. Yes, we are absolutely doing turkey.
We may do tacos. I've just decided. I don't know if I want to do a bird.